The night my family threw me out of our $3.2 million Miami penthouse, my mother told me something I would never forget. "You don't belong here anymore, Avery." My sister was standing behind her, smiling. My father had already put my suitcase outside the door. And my older brother was holding the elevator open, waiting for me to leave. What they didn't know was that the man downstairs was about to call me something that would make all three of them regret that night. The owner. My name is Avery Bennett, and until that evening, I believed the penthouse belonged to my entire family. It sat high above Miami Beach, surrounded by glass walls, ocean views, and enough luxury to make visitors stop talking the moment they walked inside. My father, Richard Bennett, always called it our family home. My mother, Victoria, treated it like her private kingdom. My sister Chloe hosted parties there. And my brother Ethan used one of the bedrooms as his office. I was the one who actually took care of the place. I handled the bills. I dealt with the building management. I paid for repairs. But nobody ever thanked me. Instead, my family treated me like I was lucky just to be allowed inside. That changed one Friday evening. I came home from work and immediately noticed something strange. There were several expensive suitcases near Chloe's bedroom. "What's going on?" I asked. Chloe walked into the living room wearing a designer dress. "We're moving you out." I laughed because I thought she was joking. "Moving me out where?" She looked at Mom. Victoria stepped forward. "Your father has decided to give the penthouse to Chloe." My smile disappeared. "What?" Dad came out of his office holding a folder. "Chloe is getting married next year. She needs a place of her own." I stared at him. "You're giving her the penthouse?" He nodded. "You'll find somewhere else to live." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "This is my home too." Chloe laughed. "Not anymore." I looked at Dad. "After everything I've done for this place?" His expression hardened. "Don't make this difficult, Avery." Then Ethan walked over and took my suitcase. "You have 10 minutes." My heart was pounding. I looked around the room one last time. The ocean outside the windows was glowing beneath the Miami sunset. This had been my home for years, and now my own family was throwing me out of it. I grabbed my purse, but before I reached the elevator, I turned back. "Dad." He didn't even look at me. I asked quietly, "Are you absolutely sure this penthouse belongs to you?" He finally looked up. "Of course it does." I nodded. "Okay." Then I walked into the elevator. But as the doors closed, I had no idea that someone downstairs had been waiting for me. And when the elevator reached the lobby, the building manager, Marcus Reed, was standing there with a document in his hand. I stepped out of the elevator with my suitcase behind me. My eyes immediately landed on Marcus Reed, the building manager. He wasn't looking at my luggage. He was looking at me. "Avery," he said, "we need to talk." I forced a smile. "I'm guessing my family already called you." Marcus shook his head. "No, they didn't." He held up the document in his hand. "This came from the property records office this afternoon." I frowned. "What is it?" "Before I tell you, I need to ask you something." He lowered his voice. "Did your father ever tell you who legally owns the penthouse?" I laughed bitterly. "He says our family owns it." Marcus stared at me. "That's not what the records say." My heart stopped. "What do they say?" He opened the folder. The first page contained the address of our penthouse. Then I saw a name, Avery Bennett. I stared at it. "That can't be right." Marcus nodded. "That's exactly what I thought when I first saw it." I looked at him. "Are you saying the penthouse is mine?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to another page. "There's a recorded ownership transfer from several years ago." "Who transferred it?" "Your grandmother. My grandmother had passed away when I was 24. I remembered her clearly. She had always treated me differently from the rest of the family. Whenever my parents criticized me, she defended me. Whenever my father said I wasn't ready to handle money, she told him I was the most responsible person in the family. But she had never mentioned a penthouse." I shook my head. "Marcus, my grandmother never told me she owned this place." He looked at me seriously. "Maybe she didn't want your family to know." Before I could respond, the lobby doors opened. My father walked in. Richard had apparently followed me downstairs. "Avery!" I turned around. He marched toward us. "What are you doing?" I looked at Marcus, then back at Dad. Apparently, I'm talking to the owner of the building. Dad scoffed. Don't start with this nonsense. Marcus stepped forward. Mr. Bennett, I suggest you look at this document. Dad glanced at the paper. His expression changed. Only for a second. But I noticed it. You knew, I whispered. Dad immediately looked away. Knew what? That Grandma transferred the penthouse. He said nothing. I stepped closer. To me, Dad's face became cold. You don't understand what you're looking at. Marcus interrupted. She does now. Then he pointed to the final page. There is one more thing you should see, Avery. I looked down. It wasn't another deed. It was a handwritten letter. And at the top, in my grandmother's handwriting, were 4 words. For Avery, when ready. I felt my hands begin to shake. Marcus handed it to me. I opened the letter. The first sentence made my heart pound. Avery, if you're reading this, your family has finally done what I feared they would. I looked up at my father. He had gone completely silent, and for the first time that night, I realized Grandma hadn't simply left me a penthouse. She had left me a warning. I read Grandma's letter again. Avery, if you're reading this, your family has finally done what I feared they would. My eyes moved slowly across the page. Grandma explained that years earlier, she had purchased the Miami penthouse through a trust she created specifically for me. She had watched my family for years. She knew Richard believed every major family asset should eventually belong to him. She knew Victoria always protected Chloe, and she knew Ethan would never question our father. But Grandma had one concern. She knew they would eventually try to take the penthouse from me. I looked at my father. Why didn't you tell me? Richard's jaw tightened. Because your grandmother was old and confused. Marcus immediately shook his head. She wasn't confused. Dad glared at him. You're a building manager. Stay out of family matters. Marcus calmly replied. I've managed this property for 12 years. I know exactly what the records say. I continued reading. Then I reached the part that made my stomach drop. Grandma had written that she deliberately kept the ownership secret because she wanted to see who would respect me and who would only respect the property. Then she wrote, if they ever remove you from the penthouse, do not fight them immediately. I stopped. Why would she say that? I kept reading. Let them believe they have won. I looked at Marcus. What does this mean? He took a deep breath. There's something else. He opened another folder. Inside was a copy of the original trust agreement. The penthouse wasn't just worth $3.2 million. The trust also controlled 2 commercial properties in downtown Miami. I stared at the documents. Grandma owned these too? Marcus nodded. And you're the beneficiary of all of them. I couldn't speak. My family had thrown me out because they thought I had nothing. They had no idea Grandma had quietly protected my future. Then my phone started ringing. It was Chloe. I answered. What? Her voice was angry. Dad told me what you're doing downstairs. What am I doing? Trying to steal my penthouse. I almost laughed. Chloe, you can't steal something that was never yours. She went silent. Then she said something that made me freeze. Dad already signed the sale agreement. My heart sank. What sale agreement? The penthouse is being sold next month. I looked at Marcus. His expression changed immediately. That's impossible, he said. I put Chloe on speaker. Who is buying it? She answered proudly. A private investment company. Marcus grabbed the paperwork from his desk. Then he looked at me. Avery, what? He pointed at the buyer's name. Bennett Family Holdings. My father's company. They weren't just trying to take my home, they were trying to sell my property to themselves, and Grandma had apparently prepared for exactly this. Because Marcus opened one final file and whispered, Avery, there's a clause in the trust that could destroy the entire deal. Marcus placed the trust agreement in front of me. His finger stopped on one paragraph. Read this. I leaned closer. The clause stated that no one could sell, transfer, mortgage, or refinance the penthouse without my written approval. I looked at Marcus. So the sale agreement means nothing? Not without your signature. I couldn't help smiling. My father had been planning to sell a $3.2 million property that he didn't own, and he had already told everyone the deal was done. Marcus continued. There's another condition. What? If anyone attempts to remove you from the property or falsely claim ownership, the trust gives you the right to take complete control of the property and its associated assets. I stared at him. Grandma really planned everything. She knew your family. My phone rang again. This time it was my mother. I answered. Avery, your father says you're refusing to cooperate. I have nothing to cooperate with. The penthouse belongs to this family. No, Mom, it belongs to Grandma's trust. She became quiet. Then she said, Your grandmother wanted Chloe to have that home. I shook my head. Then why didn't she put Chloe's name on the deed? Silence. That was my answer. I ended the call. The next morning, I met with Daniel Hayes, a real estate attorney. I showed him every document Marcus had given me. He studied them carefully. Then he looked at me. Avery, your family has a serious problem. What do you mean? They signed a sale agreement for property they don't own. Can they cancel it? They can try. And if they don't? Daniel closed the folder. Then the buyer can sue them. I leaned back. For the first time, I realized how badly my family had trapped themselves. But I didn't want to destroy them. I wanted them to understand exactly what they had done. So Daniel prepared one letter. It was simple. It stated that I was the legal beneficiary and authorized owner of the penthouse. The sale was invalid without my approval, and any further attempt to transfer the property would be challenged. I signed it. Then Daniel asked, Where should I send it? I looked at him. Don't send it to my father. Then who? The buyer. That afternoon, the investment company's representative arrived at the penthouse expecting to finalize the purchase. My father and Chloe were waiting for him. They were dressed like they had already won. The representative placed a folder on the table. Mr. Bennett, we're ready to complete the transaction. Dad smiled. Excellent. Then the representative opened the folder. His smile disappeared. He pulled out my letter. Before we proceed, Dad frowned. What is that? The representative looked directly at him. Mr. Bennett, you have a problem. Dad stood up. What kind of problem? The representative placed the letter on the table. The person who owns this property has officially rejected your sale. Dad's face went pale. And then, the elevator doors opened. I stepped out, and everyone in the room turned toward me. The room went completely silent when I stepped out of the elevator. My father stared at me. Chloe looked confused, and the buyer's representative immediately stood up. Ms. Bennett? I nodded. Hello? My father's face turned red. What are you doing here? I looked around the penthouse. Apparently, I'm here to stop someone from selling my home. Chloe stepped forward. Dad, tell her to leave. Dad pointed toward the door. Avery, you have no right to be here. Before I could answer, the building manager, Marcus Reed, walked into the room. He looked at my father and calmly said, Actually, Mr. Bennett, she has every right. Dad stared at him. Marcus continued, Because Avery Bennett is the registered owner and beneficiary of this property. The buyer's representative closed his folder. We're withdrawing from the transaction. Dad panicked. You can't do that. Yes, we can. Your company attempted to purchase property from someone who didn't have legal authority to sell it. Chloe looked at me. You knew this? I nodded. Grandma made sure I would. My father stepped toward me. You're destroying this family over a building. I shook my head. No, Dad. You destroyed the family when you decided I didn't deserve a place in it. He became silent. I looked at Chloe. You can keep the furniture you brought in. I'll give you time to move out. She looked stunned. You're kicking me out? I smiled sadly. No, I'm asking you to leave the property you never owned. Then I turned to my father. You have 30 days to remove everything belonging to the family. He stared at me. And what happens after that? I looked through the floor-to-ceiling windows at the Miami skyline. I keep the penthouse. Marcus stepped beside me. And the 2 commercial properties connected to the trust. My father's eyes widened. You knew about those? Yes. He had spent years believing I was the least important person in the family. He had no idea Grandma had trusted me with everything she had built. Months later, I renovated the penthouse. But I didn't turn it into a place for parties or expensive furniture. I created a quiet space where young women leaving difficult family situations could receive temporary housing and legal support. Because Grandma had taught me that wealth wasn't about owning the biggest home in Miami, it was about having the power to decide what happened next. My family eventually apologized. I accepted their apologies. Months later, I renovated the penthouse. But I didn't turn it into a place for parties or expensive furniture. I created a quiet space where young women leaving difficult family situations could receive temporary housing and legal support. Because Grandma had taught me that wealth wasn't about owning the biggest home in Miami, it was about having the power to decide what happened next. My family